Hey everybody, how's it going? It's been a while since I've done one of these videos, but with us being less than a week away from the NBA season, which that is insane to say to me, I want to do rankings for each conference, and then a watchability tier list at the end of it. But I just kind of wanted to break down what I thought heading into the season. Maybe I can look back on this at the end of the season or the midway point, redo it. But who knows? Maybe I'll be right on the money. I'm going to be using the Enjoy Basketball NBA standings predictions. Shout out Kenny Beecham. Stole this idea from a multitude of people, but specifically thought about it again because of the Through the Wire podcast. So, yeah. Don't want to start from top or bottom. Let's start out with the top. So, I think the Boston Celtics are going to be the number one seed out east. And let me explain why. The Milwaukee Bucks made some really big moves this offseason, and the Boston Celtics did too. And I know that when you talk about the two, you're kind of comparing them. You're inherently comparing them. I'm giving Boston the edge specifically in the regular season because I think that they just have the continuity. I know that they technically, I think, added more new players to this roster, but the two main guys are staying the same, and that's the big thing for me. Last year, you had a lot of injury problems in Milwaukee. You had some, specifically with Chris, who is the star you chose to keep. Not saying they made the wrong choice, but you have Dame, Chris, and Giannis who are all going to be figuring out how to play together. And while adding Porzingis and Holiday to that Boston system is also going to be like an adjustment, I think the adjustment you're making by adding Dame is so much bigger than the adjustments you're making by adding Drew Holiday, who's an upgraded Marcus Smart in a lot of ways, so he can fit in a lot of similar sets. And Kristaps Porzingis, who, while not very comparable to Rob Williams, I think what you're going to need from him, it's not going to be hard to get that going. And if that did make it clear, who I think is taking the 2 seed, it's Milwaukee. Yeah, it's hard to look at the addition of Damian Lillard and sit there and be like, this team isn't going to be that good in the East. Like what? The 1 seed last year, you add Damian Lillard to this team. This is a contending team. I don't think I need to explain why they're the 2 seed. The 3 seed, I'm going to go a little crazy out there. I'm going to go with New York. And I know that New York did not get noticeably better in the offseason. I actually think you could probably argue they got worse. Losing Obi Toppin sucks, but that's more of like a value perspective. I think Dante DiVincenzo will give you more in a New York system than Obi Toppin would have. They definitely got, like, for player value, they got worse. But I think that adding DiVincenzo to this team and essentially just running it back with a lot of the young players you have and the great playoff Brunson had, I don't see how this team is worse than last year. And I specifically don't see how they are worse than a lot of other teams out east. They were already one of the best teams in the league in the East last year. And Jalen Brunson really got going as the season went on. He was great to start, but he really got going as the season went on. New York has this habit of being good, then being bad, and then being good, be the 6th seed against Atlanta, and then next year you're awful picking in the lottery again. What I think changes this time is Jalen Brunson. Jalen Brunson really is why I'm putting them as a 3 seed. I have a lot of faith that Brunson's just going to keep being Brunson, and that's what New York needs. And that New York team behind Brunson, that's a top 3 seed in the East. When it comes to the 4 seed, this is where I put Cleveland. I think Cleveland honestly had a pretty good offseason. Most people saw that. The signing of Max Strus, there's a world where it doesn't work out, but I think that's a very unlikely world. I am buying all the Evan Mobley stock. I'm always buying all the Evan Mobley stock. I know we had a rough playoff. I know playing next to Jared Allen doesn't always work. But in the regular season, this team is going to be amazing. I think we're going to see some leaps from Mobley. I think defensively, even if Mobley and Allen on offense is still an issue, it could play off time. It's probably really not going to work. Defensively, in the regular season, Mobley next to Allen is such a perfect pairing that I don't think you could look at 2 other like big men in the league and say they're better defensive pairing. Let me think about that before I stand on that, because I am just kind of saying it off the top of my head. But that is it is at minimum one of the best defensive pairings in the league, especially for big men. So I think that Cleveland behind Donovan Mitchell and the Mobley improved season, Darius Garland doing what he does again, you have a hopefully solidified 3 in Max Strus. I actually also kind of like the signing of George Niang off the bench as an option for backup 3, backup 4. I really like what Cleveland did this offseason. And I think even if it doesn't mean they're probably contenders this year, they're going to be one of the best teams in the East again, at least in the regular season. For the 5 seed, this one, I'm going to be honest, I kind of think is a pity 5 seed. I'm giving it to the 76ers. I don't think Philadelphia is gone any better. They've made additions I would like if they didn't have this looming cloud of James Harden over their head. The Kelly Oubre Jr. edition could be great. I actually really like the upside on that deal. The Patrick Beverley edition, I'm here for it. Mo Bamba, sure. Those additions are fine, but the Kelly Oubre Jr. and the Patrick Beverley, those both work, I think, for Philly. But I really don't think their heart's going to be in it. I don't think... I've heard this belief that Joel Embiid is going to come out and have like a second MVP level season. It's going to hit a new gear and even be better than last year. And I really think that's a lot of projected for Philly. But I think, if anything, they're going to come into this season defeated. James Harden will probably... I'm going to say, and I would love to be wrong, is going to start the season in a Philadelphia 76ers uniform. And I just don't think this team is going to be nearly as good as teams of the past. And even after the trade, I don't really see a world where they get like an increase, they get better from this trade, an increase in value. So I'll give them the 5 seed. I think Maxey, I'm really high on him. I think Embiid can have another good season. But I think if anything, this team falls further than they raise higher. But also, once again, I'd love to be wrong. Here's where it gets difficult, though. The 6th seed, the last spot out east, I think when you look at those 5 top teams, you could basically guarantee all 5 of their spots in the playoffs. Maybe Philly, you would debate. Some people, I don't see it. Some people might not agree in New York, though. The 6th seed, though, is where it kind of gets open. And to me, I think the 6th seed out east is going to be Atlanta this year. Now, I don't think Atlanta got crazy better. I think, honestly, on paper perspective, like just a player value perspective, I think they honestly got a little worse. But you need to remember, addition by subtraction is a thing. And John Collins really wasn't providing as much to his team as they needed. I like Jalen Johnson sliding into that 4 spot. I like Sadiq Bey sliding into that 4 spot. They have competent power forwards to replace the hole that John Collins makes. Honestly, don't even have a problem with John Collins not being on this roster anymore. The only problem with that trade, I think for most fans, was just that you got nothing. It was a nothing burger of a trade for you. I understand the apprehension around Atlanta, but I really think they could figure it out a bit more this year and sneak their way into the certified playoffs. If they do anything more than that, I don't know. The 7th seed, this is another maybe controversial one, but I actually don't think it should be with how NBA Twitter talks about them. I'm going with the Indiana Pacers. There's problems there. They're probably not going to be the best shooting team in the league. They're also probably not going to be the best defensive team in the league. They have a lot of good pieces there, but I also still think they have some areas to get better on. Those 2 areas, I'll need to see to know that they don't need improvement there. But right now, I'd say they do. But man, this team is going to be incredibly hard to stop on offense regardless. A starting lineup of Tyrese Halliburton, Bruce Brown, Benedict Mathurin, Obi Toppin, and Miles Turner, that might be one of my favorite starting lineups in the league. And when we get to the watchability tier list, they're definitely going to be higher than 7. But I don't know, man. I really just, when I look at the East, this seems like their year to me. I wouldn't be surprised if they pass Atlanta, but as of right now, I kind of want to give Trae Young and DeJounte Murray the nod there. Quinn Snyder's a good coach. I think this is the year though where everyone looks at Indiana and says, okay, they're here. They're the team now. It looked like that last year when they were holding the 5 seed, and of course injuries could happen again, take them out. But I really don't think that Tyrese Halliburton's going to miss half the year again. And I really don't think that they're going to struggle to make the play-in again. I think this is a team that is going to submit themselves in the play-in this year, and maybe the next year the playoffs, or who knows, maybe even this year they submit themselves in the playoffs. At my 8, this one might be even more controversial, but I am high on them, and I'm willing to be wrong. I'm banking on the Orlando Magic taking the lead that everybody's hoping. And I know I've heard the apprehension, and I think there's some valid points. I don't think Paolo is going to jump to 25, 26. I think staying at 20 and jumping up maybe to 22, 23, that's really what they need. That's all they need to be a playoff team, to be the AC, to be a play-in team, sorry. But when I look at other rosters around the league, when I look at Miami, when I look at Brooklyn, Chicago, Toronto, these teams that are be competing for these final slots in the play-in, none of their rosters move me like Orlando's. And while they're young and they could struggle again and have another season where it's like, okay, maybe they need one more season to figure it out. I'm buying into Franz. I'm deeply bought into Wendell Carter. I'm bought into Paolo Banchero, Markelle Fultz I'm buying in on, Jet Howard. They just have the pieces to me where it's like, it's hard for me to imagine them losing more games than they win, or losing a significant more amount that they win, because they'll probably be around the 40 win mark if they're the 8th seed. I like what Orlando's building, and I think in a similar vein to OKC, they're going to make that leap this year. And it might be early, considering that I think they've been firmly rebuilding for less time than OKC, but I think when you look at last year, top 5 defense in the second half of the season, a lot of that can translate over. And I think that they're going to be, at minimum, like a 500 team, or close to a 500 team. The 9 seed, I'm going with Miami. Listen, this is a pretty big fall for Miami. I get that. Or not even. They were what, the 8th seed last year, like record-wise? Not even talking about after the play-in. I don't buy this offseason for them. I know nobody buys this offseason for them, but holy cow, do I not buy this offseason from them. All they did was get worse, unfortunately. I like some of the players they have. Those young players look interesting. I really think Jimmy and Bam and Hero now, because he's healthy, the best this team could get you is the 9 seed. Or maybe they sneak past Orlando and Indiana. I don't see a world where they are firmly a playoff team. And who knows, maybe they go for another run. But I think you can't bank on a Cinderella run to be good. And I think that's honestly what they're banking on. They're banking on, like, well, we surprised everybody last year. We'll get them this year. You're not going to get everybody this year. You lost Max Strus. You lost Gabe Vincent. You got worse as a team. You didn't get Damian Lillard. The best you could get is maybe Zach LaVine if the Bulls decide to trade him. Maybe, I don't even think you go for James Harden. I'm not high in Miami. That's why I have them on 9. At the 10 seed, you see the Chicago Fire. I got a rep. I might be a little biased, but I think honestly, when I look at the teams beneath them, Chicago is still a play-in team. We have the makings of a play-in roster. Kobe White, I'm expecting a really good year from. Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan, if Zach LaVine is as good as he was last year and DeMar DeRozan is like 80 to 90% of that, I think with a healthy team around them, you could easily see this team sneaking into the play-in, especially because we made additions that would take a team from like semi-contender to contender. So we made it, in our case, those additions took us from semi-play-in team to, in my mind, most likely a play-in team. Javon Carter and Torrey Craig are 2 great additions for this roster. Even though I want us to rebuild, I can't look at our roster and say we're worse than last year. And I just think the defense is going to be there again. We're going to have a little bit better shooting. I don't know. I just think our creation and our creation and our offense in general is just better than what the teams beneath us are offering. I think you could make an argument that like Brooklyn is a better defensive team than Chicago this year, maybe. They also could not be, but I don't think like Brooklyn, which I guess I'm just spoiling my 11th seed, the Brooklyn Nets. I don't think they bring as much to the table from an offensive creation perspective as the Bulls do. When I look at Brooklyn, there are people who are high on Brooklyn. There's people who think they could be back in the playoffs again, or they're firmly a play-in team. I think Brooklyn is just barely a notch above a lottery team. And a big thing for that is that they have no real offense. Spencer Dinwiddie, Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, Cam Thomas, that's not moving me. This team will move me in a few years probably when you put some pieces there around Mikal. You get an actual, no disrespect, Spencer Dinwiddie, an actual productive play-creating guard. But when I look at this team right now, they're missing so much on the offensive side of the ball that as good as they're going to be defensively, because we're looking at probably a top 10, maybe top 5 defensive team. They're not going to be that on offense. They're not going to at all. At 12, I'm going with Toronto. Listen, this team was in the play-in last year. They lost Fred, and I understand Fred. There's problems with Fred in the organization, and I'm with the teammates. They thought that Fred wasn't playing like a good team player, thinking about himself too much. Even with that, I think that version of Fred is better than Dennis Schroeder. So I don't think this team is anything significantly better than last year. I think if anything, they drop. And I am at 12, barring this team doesn't do anything. We're easily looking at the 14th seed if they actually decide to make some trades. I don't know why they're still holding on to Pascal, other than the fact that he wants to be there. I don't know why they're holding on to OG, other than the fact that they want to get 2 or 3 picks for him, which is, that 3 pick number is kind of absurd. I just don't see what Toronto's doing, and I think their record is going to show that, because they're not going to get a high pick, but I don't think they're better than any of the teams I put above them. At 13, I got Detroit. I kind of wanted to be higher on Detroit, but I can't be. I'm high on Cade. I'm pretty high on Ivy. I like this roster. I'm very high on Asar Thompson. It's just not a playoff team yet. I need one healthy year from Cade. Like, one more healthy year from Cade. One more year of not being great. And then I'm going to look at the team probably when they draft next year. Get a better 4, maybe. Get a better 3. I'm going to look at the team big. Okay, yeah, you're probably going to play a team now. But now, I just don't see it. At 14, I'm going to give it to Washington. Poole and Kuzma are enough for me to think that you're not the 15th seed, because even if you're trying to lose games, they're going to make you not lose games with how many shots they'll chuck, and eventually make fucking 26 or 30 of them in one game, and then go back to shoot 11 of 30, 10 of 30. I just think that what they have going on is honestly better than Charlotte, which is why Charlotte is my 15th seed. Hey man, you keep Miles Bridges, I think you're still the 15th seed, and now you're just worse people. I think this team, I was kind of more high on once they got Bridges back. High on them from a basketball winning perspective. I want to make it very clear right here and right now, I do not like that they signed Miles Bridges, and I don't think he should be in the league. Okay, now that we got that out of the way, it's hard to deny that adding him to the roster makes them worse, or like hard to deny that adding him to the roster would makes them better, because it does. He's a pretty competent scorer. He's a great player to put next to LaMelo Ball, but there's a chance he doesn't even play this season, considering all the stuff that comes out, and maybe Charlotte grows a pair and sticks it to him. But even then, is this team really better than anything out east? No. These are my East predictions. I like I said, a few of these I can move on. I'm not sold on Atlanta. I'm pretty high on them, but I'm not sold on them. I'm not sold on Chicago. I'm trying to talk myself into it, but in all reality, 3 of those teams beneath Chicago can beat them out. I'd be like, yeah, makes sense. But I want to hear what you think down below. Do you agree with my East predictions? Do you think Milwaukee's going to beat out Boston? Do you think New York's going to fall off? Do you think Atlanta's going to be as good as I hope? Or do you think Miami could be good again? Please let me know down below. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.